And today's speaker is a very good example of a good ambassador and really wanting to step up to share her experience as well. So I would love to welcome on stage Usha from Global Payments, who will talk about global cloud anomalies. Welcome.
Thanks, Ruben. Appreciate it. Is this on? Good afternoon, everybody. And that was a really nice welcome. Thank you very much. I try to give back from all that I've learned from this community and gained from here. So I am the director of Cloud Business Office at Global Payments. Like he said, I am an ambassador. I'm also a certified FinOps practitioner and certified engineer now, too. So if anybody hasn't taken that test yet, you can YOLO it. There's 3 opportunities, and then you can come back. So I'm here to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is cloud anomalies. Talking about it from both the perspective of my own personal experiences, as well as all of the stories I have heard from an anomaly perspective, from the industry, from my counterparts in general. So we can go with that. So before we go in, I'd like to talk a little bit about the company I come from, Global Payments, what my role is in Global Payments, and what I try to do there. And then we can kind of delve into anomalies, why they are important, what are our usual anomalies, and then the crazy ones that come up once in a while, and then go from there. So I'm not sure how many of you have heard about Global Payments, but I'm pretty sure everybody's been impacted by what we do. We have 2 main businesses. We are a Fortune 500 company with about $8.67 billion in revenue, 27,000 members worldwide, so not small by any chance. And we had a mind-boggling 73 billion transactions that were processed last year. So what kind of transaction are we talking about, right? So there's merchant and there's issuer. By merchant, it is all of the point-of-sale systems, the places where when you go shop or when you fill up your gas, you go swipe your cards. The processor engine behind all of that is Global Payments. So if you've ever had a drink at Starbucks, if you've ever filled your gas at a gas station, if you bought Burger King, bought clothing at H&M, or done a PayPal transfer for a friend or a small business owner, you have experienced the technology of Global Payments. On the issuer side, it's all of the financial institutions, the companies that provide branded credit cards, like, say, Old Navy credit cards, things like that. The network card companies, your Visa, MasterCard, we work with all of them on the issuer side. So from a perspective of strategy, Global Payments has chosen to be in a multi-cloud space. And that's mainly because we are divided into the issuer and merchant segments, and keeps my job complicated and fun. So I run the Cloud Business Office at Global Payments, and I've been there for the past 2 years. I was new to FinOps from an official perspective, but I realized in the past experiences that I've had, I've done a lot of FinOps work. And in my role, I've tried to break down what we do into 4 different categories, one being financial reporting, monitoring, anomaly detection, where we work with stakeholders. We give them a view of what their cloud spend is. We provide them inputs on any spikes that happen. We provide them any other data that they are looking for, any customized data sets. And then, of course, we do the core of what FinOps is about, cloud cost optimization and efficiency management, right? I'll come back to the SaaS Center of Excellence later, but the third aspect of it is building out like a cloud community of practice. This is something I'm really proud of because we started from scratch, and we now have a very robust cloud community of practice session where we have multiple sessions in a month providing the technology team in general, or anybody who wants to learn about the cloud, even if they're not participating in it. We provide them knowledge share sessions. We provide education sessions. We generally try to evangelize FinOps and what it stands for in the community. And so that's the third aspect of it. And then fourth is SaaS Center of Excellence. I was really excited to see licensing and SaaS on the keynote speech today, because that is something I've been trying to put in place in my organization from a governance perspective, putting in a framework from intake all the way to the retirement of the SaaS application and how we can optimize all of that. Of course, none of this is possible without our stakeholders. We are a team of 3, as I'm sure several of our FinOps teams are. But we work on a regular basis with cloud operations, platform engineering. We work with procurement. We work with finance. We work with legal, data architecture. So it's not possible without having the collaboration of all of the teams. And so I try to go with the approach that it's easier to catch flies with honey than with vinegar. And it seems to be working so far. So coming to anomalies, why is this important, and why do we want to focus on this, right? Anomalies generally is the deviation of something from a normal pattern, from a normal routine. And I'm sure a lot of you know what it is, so I don't have to come explain it. But it basically helps avoid any crazy over spikes. It helps avoid unnecessary spend. It is cost avoidance more than any optimization effort itself. So there's a usual suspect, misconfiguration of something, some resources, IAM policies not being set up right, spike in traffic, unused resources, or new deployments happening which cause increase in cloud spend. Those are your normal ones that happen. The reason we want to keep focus on this is these normal ones in the cloud phase can spike and get crazy really fast. And then there's the rare anomalies that do happen as well. I personally haven't experienced any of the rare ones. I'm glad I haven't, but I've heard horror stories. And while I was researching for this session as well, I was reading up on some of these. And in fact, I think I spoke to one of my counterparts last week, and he told me how he had an anomaly spike. And then I also heard about it in an ITSM session earlier yesterday. So what are those? Unusual usage during off hours. This could be where there is an unencrypted API in place, and somebody's decided to use that to do crypto mining. And they're using your resources, and they're going and doing that. Or say you have large data transfers to unknown destinations. You've all heard of the horror stories of hospitals where there's ransomware, the data has been kind of hijacked, and they don't have capability to run their information. That's the worst nightmare scenario, but then it could also be when you set up your storage buckets, and if you set it across multiple zones and there's interzonal transfers, that causes those spikes too, right? It could be benign, it could be crazy, but we don't know till we investigate. There's sudden increase in storage use. Again, the same kind of thing, like say there's snapshot issues that we had, right? Where there were some snapshots and it was not being deleted, and there was some issues going on with how the snapshots were gathered, and it kept spiking up till we went and caught it. Extreme burst usage or traffic spikes, like say somebody sees Taylor Swift is wearing the jewelry from a small and medium business owner, and all of a sudden everybody wants to go buy that same kind of jewelry, so they go flood that site, and if they have auto scaling set up, it scales up, but if they don't have it set up to shut down when it's necessary, that cost could just keep going crazy. And then abnormally low usage. This could be the other kind of scenario where it could indicate that certain things are not going correctly. From an anomaly management perspective, the focus is usually on cost increases, not on the decrease, because there are other areas to catch hold of these kind of issues that happen when it's a decrease in cost or the service not running properly. In essential, it's like all these unexplained account charges that happen, and how do you manage it effectively without it being too costly for you. So I was part of the Management Cloud Cost Anomalies Working Group. I see several of my counterparts who contributed to that here in this session. So if you throw me any hardball questions and I'm not able to answer, I will send it to them. One of the things we came up with was life cycle of an anomaly, right? It doesn't matter which phase of anomaly management you are in, but from a life cycle perspective, this is what happens. First is the detection of an anomaly, the fact that you are aware that there's an anomaly happening that needs to be addressed. The detection could be, if you are really in the crawl phase, your cloud provider telling you, hey, something's really wrong, you need to go take a look at this. Or it could be you have this awesome AI/ML solution in place that's calling out and telling you what your anomaly is going on. So the first thing is awareness of what's going on. Notification to the right stakeholders. If you know your owners, you're able to reach out to them and go, this is happening in your space, within your account, with this service, with this particular service that you want to go look at. If you haven't had a chance, Amy Ashby has a really good presentation that she provided last year on anomaly management, where she talks about what are the key things that you need to provide when you reach out to your stakeholder and talk about an anomaly, how you want to reach out to them so that the information is very useful, and how she goes forward with it. So I highly recommend you go take a look at that. So that's the notification part. Once the notification is done, there's the analysis. From an analysis perspective, it could be that oh yeah, this is something new we deployed. We understand what this is. Sorry, we didn't give you a heads up. You can ignore it. Or it can be, yes, this is a problem. I need to go address it immediately. Let me go take care of it, right? So in the working group, we had a lot of conversations about how that resolution was going to be, whether it is just going to be an acknowledgement and do nothing, or is it going to be acknowledgement and go do the remediation, or if it is just to say that is not an anomaly at all, your solution needs to be fixed. That's the analysis part of it, and then the resolution. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to feed back into your AI/ML solution if you have one? And it's awesome if you do. To go tell it, like, if this comes up again, please ignore. Or is it going to be something where you're going to find a resolution to it, and you are going to make sure you prevent that from happening? So I can give you an example of what happened with my company on this, right? We came in, we hadn't really set up alerts at that point of time, so we came in after a long weekend. On a Monday morning, we are pulling up our cloud cost, and I see my bar graph having one spike. And we're like, oh, that doesn't look normal. So we start looking into it. And we find out that it was one of the snapshots that I was talking about earlier. And somebody actually, no, it was a logging issue. Somebody had kicked it off on a Thursday and gone home for the long weekend. And there was an issue with it to where it kept cycling up. And luckily, we caught it on Monday. There was a cost impact, but not crazy. But still, it was something we had to address, right? And these are not necessarily bad things, according to me as a FinOps practitioner, because these are the opportunities where we can go in and use them to tell the rest of the world that doesn't think you need alerts in place, that doesn't think you need policies and governance in place, and say, this is why you need it. And so that was my impetus, my driving force, to be able to convince everybody that we needed anomaly detection in place, we need alert management in place. And so since then, we have been putting in policies. So we have basic threshold policies, right, across all our clouds to say, if the cost goes over X dollars, or if it goes over X percentage, you need to send me an alert. We actually have webhooks plugged into our system to where every morning at 7:54 a.m., my phone will just go crazy because we will get anomaly alerts through my texts, and it'll tell me, here's your summary across your clouds. Here are your top 5 anomalies. So I can just take a look at that summaries and look and say, oh, it seems to be in this hundreds range. Nothing to worry about. I can just do what I need to do. Or I see a big number and I go, oh, I want to take a look at it right now. And then I jump on and I go take a look at it and we do whatever is needed in terms of remediation. So part of this whole resolution is not just fixing what went wrong or what needs to be corrected, but finding out and doing a root cause analysis to say, how do we prevent this in future? How do we make sure that this is not something that keeps coming back again and again? And all of that can be done only through a retrospective. So you go back, you look at things, and you go, how do you fix it? How do you put policies in place? How do you put prevention measures in place so somebody is not just kicking off a logging effort and going away without proper governance on top of it? So that's with the life cycle of an anomaly. There are 2 links in here, one showing you the paper that we did publish as part of the working group, and the other one is from the FinOps Foundation Managing Anomalies cost page, which has additional information in there as well. So this one is how are anomalies normally modeled, right? So I talked about it a little bit earlier when I said there's threshold-based anomalies. So you just put in a plug-in a number, and you say, if the daily average cost goes over X dollars, or if my cloud spend is over a certain percentage of my budget threshold, give me an alert. So those are pure threshold-based anomalies, usually found in the beginning stages of when you're setting up your anomaly management. And then there's statistical analysis modeling. I personally haven't seen anybody use it actively to go do an anomaly detection management, but I'm pretty sure it is used from a lot of solution providers. They use it in their background in doing all of their analysis and finding out what terms an anomaly, because sometimes the threshold-based anomalies, you say, hey, if the cost goes over 5%, give me an indication. But what if the cost is steadily increasing at 4%? And it's happening over the period of 2 or 3 months. That could be pretty big pretty soon, but it will never trigger in your threshold-based modeling. So we need to use statistical analysis on top of it, right? And the final phase is where it's the utopia, the AI ML modeling, where you can train it, you can talk to it and say, this is what I would consider an anomaly, this is not something I would consider an anomaly. These are DR things that happen on a monthly basis, so yes, you will see a spike at the beginning of every month. Ignore, and only give me true positives. Don't give me false positives. Next, I'd like to kind of look at anomaly detection from a maturity perspective. So in the crawl phase, and what KPIs are usually associated with them, right? So in the crawl phase, like I said, it's usually detected manually. It is at a very high level aggregate. So at, say, it's at a BU level or a segment level, usually the cloud service provider telling you like, hey, something is wrong, you might want to take a look at this. Something is spinning out, and you might want to address it immediately. For example, when there were a lot of BigQuery rate changes that happened last year, I think a lot of people were caught off guard because they were not expecting that price increase to go. There could be things that they could have addressed behind, but then it was like Google calling them and telling them, hey, this is happening, you might want to address this. That's not necessarily an anomaly, but then, hey, it is a rate increase, right? It was not something that you had planned on, so it's still something that impacts you. And manual identification is usually by a FinOps team or somebody who is performing the role of a FinOps practitioner, and then they reach out to whoever is needed to go and address this. From a KPI perspective, there's not a whole lot except to say, yes, in 2003, this incident happened, this was the total amount of cost we had. Or you can say, like, yeah, we had 2 or 3 different incidents, and there is usually a lot of root cause analysis that happens. It's not like a quick turnaround. It's a lot of finger pointing, people trying to figure out what exactly went wrong, who's responsible for it. And it's more manual report creations. And as you can see in that slide, where you see those spikes coming through, that is usually an indication. Like my initial story where we hadn't set it up, we came in and we saw something like this, and we're like, oh my God, what's going on? Let's go look at it. In the next phase, in the walk phase, and I would think my practice is more or less in the walk phase. I would like to get closer to the run, but I think we are in the walk phase. This is where it is identified automatically using your basic statistical rules or some third-party solution. It's identifiable at a lower granularity. Like you can go at an account level, you can go to the service level, you can look at what anomalies are being triggered in what region, in what service. You're able to do a lot more of slicing and dicing. And alerts are sent to members of the FinOps team. So like I said, I get all of the alerts every single morning, me and one other team member, and we look at all of those alerts. We do that using webhook. You can use it via Slack or Jira. You can send it to them. There's other options. We just chose this. There's a little bit of degree of automation, right? So we have the alerts in place. We have budget to actual thresholds in place. So where we have the budget, we call out and say it is this dollar value, and it's at, say, the landing zone level or at the account level, if we know the budget at the account level, and we say this is the budget, and depending on the comfort of that stakeholder, if they tell us, I want to know when the budget hits 85%. So at that time, they get an alert. And it may not be an issue, because if that 85% is something that comes around the 23rd or the 24th of the month, you're almost there, it's on track. But if that 85% hits you around the 10th of the month, there's some immediate actions you need to take, right? So there's a little bit of false positive that may come through, but it's better to know than not. There have been situations where they've used Google Anomalies, and they've set it to where everybody gets a $2,000 budget, and then you start getting triggers at 50, 60, 65, 70, 75, 80, 85, 90%. And at that point, it becomes noise. So when you're doing this kind of alerts, you want to make sure you're taking that into consideration. At what point will it become noise to where they're just going to open their spam and they're going to send it all there and it's never going to be looked at? You want it to come at a point in time where people are able to take a look at it and address things as needed, and will take it seriously. So here, there's a little bit more of KPIs, and what you see on screen is the first image there is what I see from Cloud Health. That's the application we use. So we see by cloud provider, how many anomalies are coming through, what the dollar value of the impact is, what is the percentage increase, things like that. This was taken from the Cloud Health website, so it's not global payments information, just FYI. The same thing with the bottom one. So what we do is we take that reporting, and we built a dashboard on top of that, because just pure data doesn't help me. I need to be able to find trends. I need to be able to find key areas of focus. So we pulled out this data, and again, the numbers are all fudged up. So we just say, what's your total cost? What is your average cost impact happening? How many days is an anomaly active on average? And other key indicators of like how many anomalies are there, and which regions these anomalies generally are triggered in, what services are they usually triggered in. So that gives us areas. If we keep seeing that there's a lot of logging effort happening and it keeps giving us anomalies, then that's something we want to go address. So that's kind of what we have in place right now. From a run perspective, I'm kind of going to switch it around a little. I'll give you my thoughts on what the run is, but I would like to hear from you guys what would be key features that you would see in a run phase of anomaly detection? Like what is your utopia from an anomaly detection perspective? So yes, it leverages ML algorithms. So you kind of feed it information, you teach it as to what your anomaly is a true anomaly, what it isn't. Say, for example, I would like it to be where it says, this is a marketplace service, and if it's a marketplace service, I have a separate centralized marketplace governance in place. I don't need to look at it. So you can ignore that. Or like what granularity, like you can go all the way down to your container level, or you can go all the way up to your segment level, and you're able to look at it across the board. And reporting and anomaly trends and KPIs and all of that should be something that is part of that run level anomaly detection model. And alerts are routed automatically. The resolution time is pretty fast to where people are aware that whatever does come through is usually a true anomaly. It is not a false positive. And it's calculated based at the unit cost level, right? So you can go look at it and say, this particular service should cost me this much, or like say, for example, this particular application should cost me this much. And if the cost per unit of that application is high, then something is wrong. You need to address it. So that's kind of where I look at it from a run perspective. Any thoughts, inputs from you guys? If anybody is in the run phase, I'm happy to hear from you too. Yes? Sorry, I should have given you a heads up.
I'm not in the run phase, but last year, I believe it was Palo Alto presented on a chatbot that their engineering teams could interact with when an anomaly would surface in their lower environments. It would give them the context and a button that was hooked up to a managed identity that would do the action or not, and if they deferred it, it would capture that data point, and then it would construct it into trend data that they could then use to capture a trend of inaction or capture a trend of action.
Yeah, so that is something we are trying to do as well, is to call out and say, these are all the anomalies we have detected, and here's the action that has been taken, and here's the inaction taken, and then the cost of the inaction as well. So put them on the hook for not remediating immediately. So, but usually we've seen the engineers are good about it. Yes?
There are no runners, so I'm going to walk.
Okay, yeah. I think what is really in the run phase for anomaly detection would be if you can predict the anomaly before it's actually occurring, so you don't have that financial impact, because if you're looking at the past, you will always be too little, too late. So I think that would be the perfect tool for me.
Yeah, so the AI/ML ones, there are some that can do prediction, right? Where if you know certain deployments are going to happen, it is incorporated into your forecast, it's incorporated into your system, and then it'll be like, oh yeah, I know this is going to happen. It's already been called out. We don't need to do it. Totally agree. Ruben, I think somebody there.
I'm curious if this includes the slow burn anomalies, because there are some things that we don't really find until after there's been a few months, and it's only when you see the monthly trend and someone looks into it and says, oh, we didn't have a life cycle policy on an S3 bucket or something like that.
So I think that's kind of what I was talking about, right? When we say that threshold is at 5%, if that increase is below that 5% threshold, it is never going to be seen. But if you have an anomaly detection solution in place, that will be able to detect that using statistical modeling to say, okay, this is generally always higher, and it looks at the trend over the past, say, like 9 months or something, and then it's able to capture it out as an anomaly. And that is not something from a human perspective, unless somebody goes and looks at it on a month-to-month basis. We are not going to be able to
It can get lost in the noise, so that granularity is really important, yeah.
Anybody else? Okay. So that, I just wanted to bring that back up to you guys on the run perspective. And then finally, if you are starting out, I just wanted to leave you with these things, right? Face your end goals. You're not going to be able to catch 100% of the anomalies all the time. You are going to have a lot of false positives. So figure out, take baby steps. One of my leaders keeps saying progress over perfection. So you're not going to get to perfection, but progress is always the key there. Keep moving in the right direction. Identify your key partners and owners. Tag management is very crucial at this point, because if you do not know who owns those resources, then you're not going to be able to remediate it in time. Have them be vested in your process in the anomaly management solution, because if they know that somebody's going to be reaching out to them with an anomaly, and if you know who exactly you're going to reach out to, then that entire life cycle can be a quick turnaround, and that's what you want to have in place. Normalize your data. Again, that tag management aspect of it. And choose a foundation, right? So the normalized data and use foundation is kind of interconnected. You do not want to start setting your anomaly management based on, say, Black Friday sales. That is a period that is not your normal data. You want to choose a period of time when you're starting to set it up to say, okay, this is my baseline. This is when things are supposed to be normal. And then from here, you can look at any deviations. Leverage tools that will work with your data. We use Cloud Health. Cloud Health has some anomaly detection governance in place. It's not where I would love it to be. They know this as well. But find a solution of choice that you're able to do for what works for you. Like Mike called out this morning, we are not going to be able to find something that one ring that rules them all. But maybe you have to build it on your own, or maybe you have to layer some things on top of it. But find what works for you. And choose what your level is ideal. What is noise versus what is, too little information that a lot of the anomalies get slipped through the cracks. Find your ideal levels, but again, that is through repeated iterations, through experience, through learning processes. So it's okay to make mistakes, just keep iterating with it. With that, I am done. If you have any questions, or if you have any other suggestions to talk about anomalies, I'm happy to learn from you guys too. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Usha. Are there any questions? There we go. Are you a good catcher? Whoa.
You had a backup there.
You have a backup.
So just to confirm, you use Cloud Health as the primary provider of the anomalies. Do you supplement that with like the cloud provider tool? Like there's a lot of tools now that have anomalies. Some of them are the same. Some of them are, you might have your own things that you look at. Is it primarily, in your case, the tool you use, Cloud Health, or?
So my team primarily uses Cloud Health, but I know there are other teams that also have access to the Cloud Console, so they do go look at some of the things there. As the cloud providers announced this morning, several of them did announce anomaly detection as well. Right. But again, from what I heard, it felt like threshold-based anomalies. So it's not true AI/ML level. So yeah, from a threshold perspective, you can say at this % of my budget, or this is supposed to be my average cost, you can do that. Sometimes you might want to layer your solutions to be able to get all of your aspects.
Yeah, thanks.
So I had one like in the run phase that I was wondering if you were doing. So some of this is related to the deployment of new resource or configuration change to existing resource. And if you tie into the central intake or the change management system, do you do that? Because you could capture these anomalies or be on the lookout for the anomalies at that targeted, very focused way.
Yeah, right now we are on the lookout. So when we know there's certain deployments coming, we kind of, when we see it come through, we're like, oh yeah, this is what they were talking about, or this is what we know is being deployed, we are good. And we just confirm with them though. We don't just decide on our own that it's good, because you never know. Like in the case of the DR that I was talking about, whenever there's a DR spike, you could go look at the DR and you could look at that increase and go, oh, this is DR, this happens all the time. But what if, along with the DR, there was a spike that was also happening around that same time, then you lose it, right? So while we do keep an eye out and we say, yes, we do not have predictive detection in place right now, or we do not have the capability to snooze or ignore anything. So we do get everything coming through. But when we do see that, we'd be like, hey, we see the spike. Can you please confirm that this is what is causing the spike? Because you never know. Maybe there was a delay in deployment, right? So we just confirm it with the stakeholders that they are good with it too, and then we move along. Yes, it's a little bit of extra work, but I would rather be doing that than be sorry about it.
Cool. And there is a partner out there. I'm not going to name them. There's a partner out there on the floor that looks at the pipeline and gives you the expected impact and cost of the deployment as it's happening, so that you could see if it deviates from that. I'll tell you offline.
More questions? Oh.
So when we get these alerts, do you try to get them looked at within a period of time?
Yeah, like I said, we look at the numbers, the dollar values, and the minute we see if it's like over $100 or $200, we start looking at how much percentage increase it is, right? Say it's something that normally costs you $1,000 or $15,000. If it goes $100, it's like, okay. But if it is something that normally costs you $50 and it's 100, then that's something you want to take a look at. So we look at percentage of cost increase along with the actual cost impact.
So there is some initial triage?
Yes.
And then it's assigned to someone?
Yeah. So not necessarily assigned to somebody. Like my team, like I said, we're a very small team, right? So one of us, we reach out. We have this centralized chat space for tracking all of the different anomalies that come through. So we tag the person there and we go, hey, we are seeing this spike. Can you please explain what's going on? Or please address it. In fact, at one point, we found that there was a spike, coming back to his question about deployments, right? We're like, oh yeah, we see this. We know this deployment is happening. Can you please confirm this is expected? They looked at it and they said, oh no, it looks different from what we were expecting. They went back and they had to do design changes, but we caught it immediately. So it was not a significant impact, but there were design changes that had come through that were not supposed to be there. So we do some triage. We can't obviously look at all of the 100 anomalies and like all down to the dollar cents. So we try to catch the biggest ones.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out if there is any fatigue based on these alerts. So, you say that you have a small team and...
yeah, we're not looking at every single one. Like it's not, if they give me 10 other people or a data center for that, I'm sure I can look at every single one.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Usha. And we'll see each other back in 3:15 after the break. Thanks so much.
Thanks for watching. Check out more FinOps X 2024 content on our YouTube channel on the 2024 playlist. Support our channel by liking, subscribing, clicking the notification bell, and by leaving comments and questions for our speakers. We appreciate your support.